We're both co-founders of it. This is Bernice. She is executive committee member at large. And there are a couple of other folks who wanted to be here tonight but could not be. Thank you all for being here. We wanted to have an opportunity to meet with Jay Jacobs, who I know that some people in this room know and some people don't. Jay is the chair of Nassau County. He's also past chair of the state party. And as the chair of Nassau, he's been very successful in electing and winning Democrats in areas that are purple to red. And so he's part of our blue wave in the Senate. I have known and worked with Jay for many, many years. There have been times when we have agreed. There have been times when we have emphatically disagreed. But it's Jay has always had a very good open door policy. And he's always been somebody who has tried to work in an egalitarian manner with everybody and to hear everybody's concerns. So after the October meeting, which was, I think, generally agreed to be a debacle, we asked Jay to come here and to speak with us both about his plans and his vision for the state party, and to give everyone here an opportunity to speak with him about their own desires and goals for the state party and their suggestions about how to not replicate what happened in October, because October was incredibly undemocratic and disheartening, to say the least, and we want to work together to make sure that doesn't happen again. So with that, I'm happy to introduce Jay Jacobs.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out. When Rachel spoke with me and she suggested this meeting, I thought it'd be a very good idea because I was not at the October 1st meeting.
You missed it.
That's right.
You missed it.
I've been to most of the meetings. I am a state committee person, but I hear it was a humdinger. So I'm sorry that I didn't get to see it, but on the other hand, I'm glad I didn't get to see it. The bottom line is this. Look, I was the state Democratic chair from 2009 through 2012. I started because Governor David Patterson asked me to come aboard. I was trying very hard to salvage his governor's position. And you remember those days, Andrew Cuomo was the Attorney General, and there was talk about him running a primary against Governor Patterson, which I very much did not want to see, because I felt that on just strictly the grounds of racial discord, frankly, because we had come off of a gubernatorial primary where Andrew had primaried Carl McCall, and that was very contentious and very difficult. And I felt it was going to be a time that perhaps we had to see a different path. Well, I worked with David Patterson, and ultimately I was the person who had to go in and tell Governor Patterson, who was my friend, and it was a very difficult conversation, that he did not, in my judgment, have the votes in the state committee to reach 25%, which would have put him on the ballot automatically. And I advised him not to run. The next day he had a press conference and said he would not run. It was tough time in those days. And then I continued on with Governor Cuomo for about a year and a half, and it came time for me to go. And I went, and I felt for sure I would never be back. And frankly, I loved it. Don't get me wrong, for all of the difficulties and the times, and there were contentious times too, not quite like October 1st, but there were contentious times. I remember people screaming and yelling at me occasionally because I was in the chair seat and it was tough. I always felt that I got along well with everybody, no matter what the side was, because I have a simple view of things. Maybe it's a little bit of naivety, but I think it's just a simple attitude. We're all Democrats. We all believe in ultimately the same goal. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow afternoon. So I'm not going to, say it all today and repeat myself. But look, I think there's nobody in this room who believes any deeper than I believe that we're better off electing Democrats. We're going to disagree from time to time on what those Democrats ought to stand for policy-wise once they get elected and they're in office. That's a fair disagreement. And I can't tell you for a certainty who's right and who's wrong. I could tell you we'll have some of these differences. What I will say is this: the most important thing is that we know very clearly where we stand, and it's a hell of a lot better than where they stand. And it's important that we get ourselves a Democrat elected to whatever the position is. And then we'll work out those disagreements. And ultimately, I think the main thing we need to have in order for those differences to be worked out in a way that, will both be positive and productive is for us to, number one, listen to each other, not scream and shout, but listen. Hear what people have to say. Have an opportunity to say it and get it across. And then number two, equally important, respect one another. Because I may differ with you, and I come, from Nassau County, and I see a very different constituency and a very different political environment that I believe I've been swimming in than many people who come from Brooklyn or Queens or Manhattan who can't find a Republican if they search for one. But the fact of it is, it's just different. And I talk with people who view Democrats very differently than we view ourselves, and people in the neighborhoods where some other people may come from have friends that view them. So look, the bottom line of the whole thing is, again, we have to make progress. That's the basis of progressives. We gotta move forward. We're gonna have to do the best we can, but we're gonna have to respect each other. We're gonna have to listen to each other. And I'm gonna tell you this, before it gets to the point where they nominate me for the state chair again, and hopefully I get elected, it's gonna be run, the meeting will be smoother, I trust, but it's gonna be run by the same people that have run them before. When it occurs, it should occur that way, as I hope it will, that I do get elected, I'm gonna be handed that gavel, and I'm gonna tell you something. As those who were with me back in 2009 to 2012 will remember, and they know in Nassau County, I hold the gavel, and I will chair the meeting. And what I'm asking for is, and I will hear you when you make an objection. It isn't that I'm selectively hard of hearing, all right? I will do those things because I think it's important that you're heard, and I will follow the rules. And I'm gonna ask some latitude on your part, because here's what I'm gonna ask. We're gonna have resolutions, we're gonna have disagreements, and we're gonna talk about all of those things. What I'm gonna try to do is work it in a way where we can conduct our business rationally and reasonably so that the business actually gets done. Stall tactics, the use of having to go through extensive roll calls where we know and it is obvious what the result is, I'm asking you not to participate in. Because I want to get the answer, but I want it to be the fair answer. If it's not something we can discern, by voice vote, and people really can't tell, and because of weighted vote, it may be dodgy as to what it is, call for a division, we'll have a division. The first way I'm going to do a division, just so you know, and I'm going to ask for your indulgence, because I want to be able to move past it quickly in this time, is I'm going to ask all the people who favor the resolution to take their proxy cards and go to this side of the room. If you have 5 proxy cards, you're up at the front, 1 proxy card in the back. Opposed, same thing. And then we'll get a visual, and they'll count them. Now, obviously, if it's close, we got to go to weighted vote, and that's going to take the regular process. I'm not here to bamboozle you. I'm not here to pull one over on you. What I'm asking for is your indulgence. If you see, 150 people there holding multiple cards, and 60 people here not holding as many cards, we know what the answer is going to be for the most part. Unless, of course, the 60 over there are Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, all that. And that you're going to know too. You can see that. You know who the people are, and we can ask that. I'm just saying to you, we just want to conduct the business. I want to have good time for debate, and so your voices are heard, and maybe the case will be made. And then I'd like to take a vote. Now, in the future, and this is one of the resolutions, and Jay was, he and I had conversations on the phone about this, and I think this is a brilliant answer to a lot of the problem. Oh, you too? Okay.
My name's in the quote.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I did the
That's
shopping.
true, that's true, good. You did the shopping. And I'd say, and I spoke with them also, by the way, that's a good outfit. This concept of electronic balloting, I think is gonna be so simple. It's gonna cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000.
Kelly gets a lot of credit for this too.
Yes,
Okay.
that's good.
And it really
you.
is a great idea. Because here's the whole problem. The whole problem is these damn weighted votes take forever. And so everybody, wants to get out. You don't wanna lose people who wanna get home, then you lose your votes and there's pressure. So, we'll have an organized time for debate. I'll ask for debate again where people will come up to the center in line and you favor here, opposed here, whatever it may be. And each should get about 3 minutes or so to make their case. Please don't repeat what somebody else has said for the 16th time. And, just to make it move, because everybody tends to like to do that, me included, all right? And then we'll have it all out and have the vote. But now with the electronic voting, what'll happen is in the future, we won't have it for now, if you pass the resolution, which I hope you do, there'll be a clicker. And everybody will get a clicker for yourself and all of the proxies that you're entitled to carry. You'll then, at the right time, be able to click yes, no, abstain. It'll happen automatically. The clickers will be assigned to you specifically, all right? So Mark, yours will be with your name, your AD on it, and it'll have your weighted vote, if you're a state committee person, all right? On it, it'll be all computerized. So your weighted vote will be credited to you immediately when you vote yes, no, and it'll come up on a board and we'll see how the vote goes. And then everybody's vote will be counted and your voices will be heard. That way we'll have order in the state party.
And it'll only take 5 minutes.
5 minutes, done, right, all right? That's where we're gonna go. Irene, a question?
Will you be leading the discussion of resolution?
Yes, I will be leading it, and as such, I will not weigh in, because I will be impartial as the chair, all right? It's gonna kill me, but I will do that.
God bless you.
But I will do that, yes.
Right. When do you expect this to be ours?
If you vote in the resolution that the Progressive
Yes.
Caucus presented, this time, if you vote tomorrow, yes, and we pass it, which I believe we will, then by the next meeting in the fall, we will have it, all right? And we will have it,
I do have a question.
okay?
Who's going to do the technological part?
Who's gonna do the technological part? Not me.
No, I understand that.
I mean, we will have a team.
But
that-
somebody has to.
Yeah, we will get it right. It will not be the Russians either, okay?
Yeah, who's gonna program it all?
No, this is all a program that.
It's
you know,
preset program.
It's preset. In other words, you come in, you send them the material, they get the votes, they preset it, and we get it. And we're gonna label every clicker, so that's what we have to get them back.
And when we can audit our own votes. So we
Exactly.
go back and see, I voted yes, that's me, I
Right, but
voted yes.
Exactly right.
Every 4 years, the weighted vote changes. So
Yes, it'll change.
Do we do that, or does the
Sure.
company do that?
No, we submit what the vote is for each of you, you have your vote, that's how it happens. Yes,
What's that?
What would be the reporting out of that? In other words, at the next committee meeting? or-
no, you would see it right then and there. You will see who voted for what.
Yeah, but will there be a report?
Hiding.
We could provide a report for you, yes. It's an open, we are supposed to be public in how we vote. So absolutely.
It's like the House of Representatives, you
Right.
can look in and you can see a
Right.
representative voted yes or no on
Right.
this resolution for the state committee. The House of Representatives has been voting with the electronic device for a long time. So it's the same technology that they use, Colorado Republican Party
Right.
uses, and Fortune 500 company boards use.
Yeah, I think we can come into the modern age and do it. So these are some of the things, yes,
Sorry
I'm
to
sorry,
step on.
that's okay.
So each member will be able to carry their own clicker
Yes.
and the clicker of the proxies.
That's right.
One of the things that happened in this last meeting is from the leadership was an indication to all members, hey, if you're not gonna be there, let us know, send us your proxy, and we'll make sure your proxy gets carried. One of the deficits of this committee is that we, as committee members, are not able to communicate with one another directly.
Mhm.
There has been resolutions passed that say that information should be shared, we should be able to communicate, so that we can decide and offer proxies to one another. Will you make sure that happens?
Here's what I will provide. I'm a member of the Democratic National Committee. I get every year an updated registry of the members, where they're from, and their email. And I have no problem providing that here.
Thank you.
All right? So that will enable you to do that. Yep.
I have another, since you brought it up, actually,
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions here, but you're saying everything I want to hear, so I hope you do it.
Okay.
I've been trying to death.
Could you stand up so we can hear?
Sorry, hi, Patrick Nelson, Saratoga County, 113. I don't know. I've been trying really hard. I've made multiple calls to the secretary of the DNC, sent multiple emails to the DNC. I talked with the former chairman Byron Brown.
To the state.
No, to the DNC.
The DNC, okay.
I'd like to be able to
Current
review.
chairman, Byron Brown.
Current chairman Byron Brown. Fair enough. Soon to be, or whatever. I don't know if he'd resigned or not.
Okay.
We gonna see him tomorrow?
Yes, he's here.
Oh, so it won't be Chris Quinn, it'll be, okay, fair enough. I think everybody on this, since we are responsible on the state committee for electing members of the DNC, I don't think we can do that in an informed fashion if we can't review the minutes of the DNC and how you and the rest of the DNC members in the state of New York are voting to decide whether or not we want to re-elect those people, elect new people, and I have been getting stonewalled at the DNC as a state committee member trying to review the minutes of the Democratic National Committee. Can you help us get access to those?
Yeah, but
executive
that's
committee?
not gonna give you any vote in the minutes. What I will tell you is this: the only recorded vote that I recollect taking ever was on the last vote for the last chair, when Ellison was running and Perez and all of those folks. That vote I remember we took, and that I believe is recorded somewhere. The rest of them typically are, voice votes and, hand votes, and, go on pretty amicably. No, we don't get, into, so there haven't been.
Not a contestant.
It's not,
Okay, fair
nothing tends to be contested. The kinks are taken out before it gets to us, meaning that everybody has hashed out the various positions as it stands. But I'm always happy to report to you on what we're doing at the DNC and what's going on there. As a member of the DNC, I'm an at-large member, meaning I was appointed at recommendation of President Obama to the chair at the time, and that's how I'm not a state. I wasn't elected by the state in that, but I could certainly get you that information.
Jay,
But-
to follow up on that, I think some of the concern that we've heard about the DNC is that people just don't know what is happening substantively at these meetings, right? Isn't that part of the?
And I'm a wonk and I eat this
Yeah.
stuff for breakfast and I have trouble finding it.
Right, and so I think that part of it is
Feed
like,
this man.
yeah, is that people, I mean, I think having you present would be fantastic, but I also think it would be great if we could just find in some systemic way of finding out what the agenda was, what, just what the topics were that were being considered.
We can get that, most certainly. We can get you that. I will tell you this, Patrick, I'm gonna disappoint you, but I go to these meetings,
Yep.
and oh boy,
Yeah,
I
good
mean,
Lord.
a lot of it is a lot of nothing. A resolution at the DNC is typically something along the lines, be it resolved that Martha Washington was a great first lady. All in favor? Okay, so most of it is that. What happens in the DNC, where it is meaningful, remember, what's the DNC for? Primarily, the DNC is constituted to organize the national primary and caucus effort and the national convention. That's it. And the rules surrounding them. Now, I have gotten, and we're late, by the way, I have gotten all of the delegate selection rules, which have to be complied with. Now, they're not that different from what we've done in the past, so we're going to make minor adjustments. We have to have an affirmative action plan. There are certain requirements for delegate selection, and I'm going to get into that right away and be asking folks for volunteers to help, work on that, because it's complicated. You might want to do it. And so every state prepares that. At the Rules Committee, the Rules and Bylaws Committee is where the action takes place at the DNC. I'm on the Credentials Committee, so I deal with things where there's an objection to somebody's membership in the DNC or at the National Convention, things like that. That's where I work on that committee. But Rules and Bylaws, which one day I'd love to be on, they set all of obviously the rules for delegate selection and how primaries are conducted, caucuses and the like. And that is where I think, that action, as those things are reported out that's information you'll like. Okay, and then everybody, typically in the DNC, everybody, once it comes out of rules, everybody tends to buy it. Yep.
I'm Rich Elm, 1895.
Where is 95?
Putnam. First, just as a point of information, Chris Reeves, who is also on the DNC, writes for Daily Caucus. He writes a column called Nuts and Bolts, and he writes a very extensive review of DNC meetings. So if you want to learn, that's
That'd be
one of the
good.
places
Thank
to go, and you learn a lot.
Like
What-
3 or 4 pages, a lot.
Yeah, he does. He's pretty extensive. I was thinking as I was coming here, what word comes into my mind about my experience being on this committee for the last couple of years. And besides condescended to or rubber stamp or predetermined is the word that keeps coming into my mind. And when I looked it up, it says to impose the direction beforehand. Fixed, set. And so I feel like we could do this remotely and via Zoom or just ask me for my signature, but that we're really not, as a group of people who are spending a lot of money and a lot of their time traveling great distances, and in theory, the heart and soul of the Democratic Party in New York State, that we're discussing key issues. That we come here and we're in a rush to get out of here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Why aren't we having an hour-long session on Amazon and what went wrong and how we were fighting as a party and trying to discuss where the common ground is? Income inequality, Medicare for all, other key issues that we're facing as Democrats. Why aren't we, as the house of the New York State Party, that's what I see this committee as, coming together and discussing those issues as a group?
Well, here's where we'll have a philosophical disagreement.
Okay.
And the discussing of them, I have no problem. Because that, I think we should discuss them, and I think we're here to advise our elected officials, let them know what our sense is from where we are. But I also always want you to be mindful of the fact that the officials who get elected actually stand before the people and actually have a contested election and have to and have to win their re-election based upon the record that they have voted for and done. That's, the theory. Of course, there are imperfections in that as well, we all know. But that's the concept. I see, and I'll talk about this tomorrow as well. And again, this is my personal opinion.
Yep. And
we have every right to people object to it in the room. But my personal opinion is that resolutions of this body related to specific policy direction to elected officials is something that can be counterproductive to what our mission is. Mm-hmm. Our mission is to elect Democrats. And when we here, let's say, would come up with what we would believe, and maybe right, is the best course of action, let's say in healthcare, and we prescribe it, that is what the Republicans will hang around the necks of people in places like Suffolk County and Chemung County and Cayuga County and other places that may not sell as well in those places as they sell here. And what you've done by doing that at times is you have encumbered those elected officials running for re-election or challengers running to take office with the view of this body, whose primary mission, by the way, what we're constituted for under the election law and elsewhere, is to nominate candidates for state office, right? Mm-hmm. And to build an organization, which I'm going to talk about as well, which we haven't had, that helps elect more Democrats everywhere. All right?
North Country.
Everywhere. Right?
Could I respond to that? I'm going to debate Jerry on this one,
Okay.
because as a long-time, that's okay. As a long-time state committee member, I want to say that in my opinion, there's a very powerful and important role for policy resolutions. For example, when we did not have domestic partnership much less marriage equality. The state party, I was the person on the state party who pushed the state party to first, support domestic partnership and then marriage equality. And the state party, many people were extremely resistant to both of those things, many elected officials, and we put together a subcommittee and we came out with a series of recommendations. This was after Vermont. And having the state party take a position when many of our elected officials were still quite bad on that issue was very powerful and very important. And the same thing with the IDC. I mean, the state party actually came out and took a position first with Elisa Sumner protesting Jeff Klein's reassignment as vice chair to the state party, and then with the reso that we had repeatedly put forward and then eventually got passed on the floor, that in both of these are ways in which the state committee members as a body can make their opinions known, the rank and file can make their opinions known and really impact in a very positive and powerful way policy with elected officials who may be wavering on the fence. It's our way of letting them know what we think.
And
Now,
Jay, I just wanted to
Okay, go ahead.
follow up with
Go ahead.
what you said, which is that I recognize that elected officials need to have leeway and be able to set policy on some level. But I also feel that there's a balance that needs to be had between the party that's providing them support, and they're calling themselves Democrats, and the candidates themselves. And there'll always be a tension that should exist, and there needs to be flexibility. So in every instance, I'm not suggesting that we have to walk out of a discussion and come up with a policy on Amazon. It might be that we make an effort to find common ground or to talk together about what was each side right about. Where is the common ground? What can we learn together? So it doesn't always have to be some hard and fast resolution, but a discussion and some balance. Right now it feels like this: elected officials, us. And it needs to come more into balance in my mind. Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll get you the back right. Yep.
There's kind of two strands. And, the resolution strand and the elected strand. And this is what we see in our national politics now, of people who are taking positions which are in front of or behind or whatever you want to call it. So my idea, or thought is to find some way in which these two strands come together in some way and are not opposing each other but are supporting each other. I don't have an answer for a vehicle, for a person, for anything, but I think that this is really important because this is what we see all over the country.
Yeah.
Like AOC, who's off talking about this, that, and the other thing, etc. As an example, which we all see every day.
Yes, sir? Did you have something?
The flip side of having
Speak up, please.
the alternative viewpoint to having the goal of the party or the objective of the party being to elect Democrats is to electing a Democratic platform, of course. That's the other side, the other end of your spectrum. There's two different philosophies, right? And in the European parliamentary system, that's what it would be, right? Each party would have a platform, and you would support that platform. And the danger of getting too far away from that, in my opinion, is it means that it allows the candidates to play to only electability as opposed to what it means to be a Democrat. And we see that in some places. I mean, I know in my county, we have a situation where there is someone, I don't know why this person is registered as a Democrat, I don't know. He doesn't vote that way at all in the legislature, but there it is. So I think that, there's an argument to be made, a good one, for the role of positions or platform in defining what it means to be a Democrat. Right?
Yeah, no, listen, I don't view the Democratic Party as the number 6 plus. The vehicle you take to get from here to somewhere you want to be. I don't view it like that. So I agree with you on that. I think there are certain things that are necessary as a Democratic Party for us to, opine on. I'll also say, and Rachel, there are things like the IDC and other issues that come up that have to do with elections, the party structure itself, process and procedure. There are definitely things that we should be dealing with and talking about here in this body. But I just caution everybody in that, think about it from the position of even someone like myself, all right, who favors a lot of the very same things that I'm sure you favor. And being asked to support a resolution, all right, of this body on that item when I know full well that in certain areas of Nassau County, and I'm the county chair, it will be anathema. It will be exactly hung around the necks of people, and they would rather me just stay out of it so as not to have it. That's a difficult issue that makes it complicated. It's not that, I may not support that. It's just that, and then here's the other piece of it, and again, there'll be disagreement on this. It's the whole nature of how much do you compromise in government and in politics. And people have their own choices to make on that. There's no right or wrong on that. That's just how you view it. My view is, I'd rather get 40% of the pie and not 60% more than get 0 of the pie. Some people would rather say, we gotta go for what we gotta get, and if it's not 90%, don't take anything. So it's just a difference of philosophy. It's not, right or wrong, I don't think. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
That choice is not, I think that's an artificial picture of what the choice is. The choice is not between an uncompromising position always and a very compromised position or partially compromised position. It's a choice between whether or not we expect and support our candidates in providing actual leadership on the issues that are really important. If you don't push people to stand up for a particular position or posture, policy posture, and you don't give them all of the support necessary to make the case for that, and really require them to make the case for that. Because in a lot of situations, it's about not wanting people being uncomfortable selling positions that are difficult, right? And the party needs to push on the things that are really important to it to make sure that the people on the ground, the candidates on the ground, are strong voices for those positions.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll get to you a second.
Jay, yeah, thank you. I've been on the state committee for 34 years, and I've been an elected official in different positions and county chair and gone through several different positions. And first I want to reinforce what Jay is saying about, I think, the importance of recognizing that our major role is electing Democratic candidates. Because in the end, I don't care what your position is, if you don't get a Democrat in there, it really doesn't matter. So our number one goal is to I also want to support what Rachel said, because I think on key statewide universal issues like the IDC and other statewide issues, those are issues that can come before the state committee. Well, we've had issues in our county, I'm in Otsego County out of Oneonta, where we can't even come to agreement on energy policy. And if we tagged our candidates with certain positions on energy, some of them would lose. And so I think it's very important for us to discern which issues we can discuss and support at the state committee level and which ones we have to tackle at the local level. And
That's it.
well, yeah, I guess I would end with that, but
Bill
I think that's
Greenwald,
well said.
Westchester,
Yeah,
excuse me.
Bill, sure.
I think it'd be a tremendous advance. Everybody in this room recognizes it would be a tremendous accomplishment to have our views and the views of other caucuses and groups listened to, respected. That's a tremendous accomplishment, and we thank you for your comments on that. every time an issue comes up, there will be perhaps this tension, this balance. And I'm sure that if it is an issue that you and other people feel should not be disposed of in some way by the state committee, and there's always tabling is something we know about, certainly, and the idea of getting votes is great, that sentiment could be brought forward, and hopefully it will have some purchase, and it may very well sway the discussion and the outcome on that particular issue, and people may decide that the state committee is not an appropriate body at that time to take it up and resolve it, but they may also decide the other way.
I agree with that.
Chair.
Yep, I'm sorry.
I'm an executive director. Do you have any say in that? Because we haven't in the past, and I feel like I appreciate your style in general, is more hands-on than perhaps some of your predecessors. Most of us are going to interact with the executive director more frequently. I'll just speak for myself, although I know I'm not the only person who feels this way. Jeff was really a disappointment. And I was very frustrated with him. Thought Basil was fabulous. No one's perfect. Certainly people make decisions that I don't agree with, but at least their accessibility and ability to commit to a statement and to follow through is important. And I at this body, rather than rubber stamp whoever the next executive director is, can we be a part of the process in terms of choosing him or her?
I think that the bylaws are clear. I read them clearly about this. I think the executive director is selected by the chair. I think that is what has been done. I know in the past, when I was the chair the last time, the executive director was strongly recommended from the governor's office. This time, in my taking of the position, the governor made it very clear. You pick your own executive director, you pick your own team, you get this organization into good shape and run it, and he trusts that I'll do it in a way that is positive for the organization. I will tell you this: if the executive director is not doing their job, if anybody on the staff is not doing their job, you will find me to be a very active and engaged chairman. Then that is me. I'm responsible for that, and that I need to know about.
Can I follow up with Dan though?
Sure.
Because I think that part of the challenge I have had with chairs, and other people may want to speak with this, not chairs, EDs, is whether or not they feel they have the authority to make decisions. They're empowered to make decisions and to communicate that to us. And that part of what made Basil, a strong, from my perspective, ED was that you could negotiate with him, you could talk to him, he could make decisions. He sometimes, then lived with the consequences of that. But I think that that's the other thing, like just as we appreciate an independent chair, I think we'd like to also have an independent ED that we could all talk to and make real decisions.
Look, again, I don't want to sound like Al Haig, but I am in command of I'm going to be up here, and I'm going to tell you this. The ED is going to, if there's an issue, he's going to talk to me about it, but I would suspect I'm going to be the person engaged in those kinds of things, as I was. That is, I'm looking as an executive director as executing, as getting it done. If I say, let's get everybody's email and get them out, the executive director doesn't make that decision to decide that. That's the chair that makes that decision. The executive director gets it out, gets it done. That's as I see the operation functioning. That doesn't take anything away from the body, because I'll have to be held accountable to come here, and I'm sure there will be those things. It's not going to run perfectly. I know that, and I'll be accountable to that. And I'll try to explain it best I can. Now, please understand also the uniqueness, and Patrick, I'll get to you in 1 second, but I just want to have you understand this. Look, the state party and the state chair is in a very interesting position. When there is no governor, right, of your party, you've got a lot more latitude to do what it is. You think you're the top Democrat in the state if you're the state chair. It's the same thing, by the way, for DNC. You know, you take a look at Howard Dean when he was DNC chair, and then and Tom Perez now. All right, he's got, who's telling him what to say or not to say? Nobody. All right, no, really, nobody. But when you have a governor, remember something. The state party can't raise 10 cents on its own. Remember that.
Correct.
I was the state chair when Patterson was in, and Patterson had no juice with anybody for raising funds. And Cuomo was telling people, don't give a dime to the state party, they're against me.
Oh, good.
That was when Patterson was in. I'm telling you. Because he wanted to become, when he became the governor, when he became the nominee, then he began to help raise money for the party and build things up. It wasn't his fault. I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay? And so I'm just going to tell you that you're somewhat beholden to the relationship you have with your sitting governor. So you don't have the complete latitude to just run and go and say and do whatever you want to do. You have to work it.
Thank you
And
very much.
and you have to do it in a way that he's not going to be embarrassed. His objectives are going to be supported. Because remember something else, and fairness. There was a primary. The guy won the primary. He got an election. He won the election. He's the governor. That's who the people have elected in that position. And so you can't take it away from the fact that that's going to have some meaning. Now, that being said, like I've heard here, that doesn't mean we're nothing. That's not what that's about. It means there's a balance. And you have to sometimes walk a tightrope. And I believe in working together with people. And I will tell you this from the governor's standpoint, because we've had long conversations. And he's of the mindset, number one, that this whole, as he calls it, Trump thing, is a real threat. I mean, he's on a tear about it. Not just what you hear publicly. I mean, I get him at 6:10 in the morning sometimes. And he'll go on about something that was in the paper about this. We have to be ready. He has an expectation that we're going to have a state party that is going to be organized around the 62 county chairs, all right? That will be in some fashion connected such that recommendations that come from the county chairs get real attention, go through the state party. We are able to help promote that, to build an organization. What does he want it for? He wants us to be able to send people into the street, not just in New York where we're going to win, but into Pennsylvania, into Ohio, into places we have to do what we have to do. All right? So he's serious about this, and I believe that, you know, we can really get a dynamic party. And look, as I say, there will always be things that we're going to disagree. We disagree with the governor about this or that. We just have to sometimes remember that the discipline of keeping it in the House is so important because it has its impact on what the news media takes and social media and everything else, and creates, you know, something out of nothing, which sometimes happens a lot.
Good to disagree.
Let me get Conrad. I'm sorry. Patrick. I promised Patrick, then Conrad, you next. Patrick, I'm sorry.
I want to take what you're saying right here and bring it back to that unified goal that we had of electing more Democrats.
Right.
And the advantage of this body is that we have Democratic representation from places like where I am in Stillwater and Saratoga County, where we have a Democratic member of the Assembly, and that's it. Republican senator, Republican member of Congress, county's all Republican. So the Democrats in my area, in my district, I'm one of the three voices that they have in the state Democratic Party. And it also comes back to, you know, I am a town vice chair. We're privileged to have two of the strongest candidates possible for town board that we've had in a long time. And I'm from an area where not only does the governor and our Democratic nominee for president in the last